What if Tyrion Lannister had exposed Cersei's children as bastards to Robert Baratheon, and Tywin Lannister had disowned his own daughter to save the house? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The Red Keep does not sleep, but it quiets. In the hour past midnight, when the last torches in the corridors have burned to half their height, and the distant sound of soldiers changing watch is the only thing moving through the stone, a dwarf sits alone in the library of the Tower of the Hand with a cup of arbor red and nothing better to do. Tyrion Lannister has been in King's Landing for 3 days. He came south from the Wall with every intention of passing through quickly, gathering what entertainment the capital could offer, and moving on before anyone thought to invite him to stay. The city has a way of swallowing people who linger. He has seen it happen to better men than him. He intends to be smarter than that. But 3 days have passed, and he is still here, and tonight the wine tastes flat, and sleep refuses to come, and so he sits among the shelves, with a single candle burning at his elbow, and reads to fill the hours. He was not looking for anything in particular. That is how it always starts. The book he pulls down is thick. The leather of its spine faded to illegibility. Inside, in the cramped, careful hand of whatever Meister recorded it, the lineages and histories of the great houses of the 7 kingdoms. A dull title for what turns out to be a surprisingly absorbing catalogue of blood and names and the carefully maintained fictions of the great families of Westeros. Tyrion reads the way he always reads, with a cup in one hand and his full attention on the page, moving through the histories of Tully and Tyrell and Lannister with the comfortable expertise of a man who has spent his life knowing that knowledge was the one weapon no one could ever take from him. He reaches the Baratheons almost by accident. He starts with the current king's entry and reads backward through the generations. Robert. Stefan before him. Before that, the grandfathers, the great-grandfathers, the line reaching back toward the founding of the house. He is nearly at the bottom of his cup when he notices it. He notices it because he is paying attention to the column of physical descriptions that runs beside each name. Hair and eye color, height, notable features, the small details a Meister records, because it is his job to be thorough, and because no one ever expects anyone to actually read these pages. Every Baratheon listed in that book has black hair. Not most of them. Every single one. Generation after generation, the legitimate heirs and the bastards, the ones born in wedlock, and the ones born in alleys and brothels, and the beds of women whose names were never written down, all black. The seed is strong. Someone has written in the margin, in ink, gone the color of old rust. Tyrion reads the note twice. A Baratheon begets black-haired children, regardless of the mother. 8 generations confirm it. Tyrion sets his cup down. He turns the pages back and reads the section again. Then a third time, slowly, the tip of one finger tracing the column. He is not misreading this. He is not imagining it. He is very sober all of a sudden, in the way a man becomes sober when he realizes the ground he was standing on has quietly shifted beneath him, without anyone announcing it. He closes the book. He sits for a long moment with the candle burning beside him and the library silent all around him. Outside, distantly, a dog barks somewhere in the lower city. One sharp sound, and then nothing. He gets up and goes to the window. The training yard below is empty at this hour, pale stone and pale moonlight. He is not thinking about the yard. He is thinking about the Crown Prince. The next morning, when the yard fills with the sounds of men at work, Tyrion finds himself at the window again, without having decided to be there. Below him, Joffrey Baratheon works through sword forms under the supervision of a pair of knights. The prince is 12 years old, and already something difficult to watch. He moves with the overconfidence of a boy who has never been told a true thing about himself. And when his sparring partner takes a clean hit across the ribs and stumbles, Joffrey does not check whether the man is hurt. He laughs. Tyrion watches. He watches the sunlight catch the boy's hair. Golden. A pale, clean gold. The colour of Lannister blood running true. His mother's colouring, and his mother's green eyes, and the fine bones of his face, belonging to the same mould as Cersei's face and Jaime's face, and, if Tyrion is being honest with himself, his own. There is nothing of Robert in that boy. Not the jaw, not the build, not the colouring. Robert is a broad, dark man, with a black beard going grey at the edges. A man who looks like a Baratheon from any angle, because he is one. Joffrey looks like he stepped whole out of Casterly Rock and was handed a crown on arrival. Tyrion looks away. He thinks of Myrcella next. 9 years old, sweet-natured, golden as her brother. Then Tommen, 8 years old and gentle, golden as summer wheat. 3 children. Not one of them carrying Robert's look. Not one. He stands at the window until his legs ache, and then he goes back inside. He knows what everyone knows about Jon Arryn. The old hand fell ill and died, and these things happen to men of that age, and the Grand Maester confirmed it was natural causes, and no one pressed further because no one wanted to be the man who pressed further when the king had just lost his closest counsellor and was already riding north to ask Ned Stark to take his place. Tyrion had not pressed further either. He was busy thinking about the Night's Watch, about wildlings, about putting as much distance between himself and King's Landing as possible. But Jon Arryn had been reading a book before he died. Tyrion had heard that somewhere in the loose current of gossip that flows freely around a man people assume is of no consequence. A specific book. A book about genealogy and the lineages of the great houses. He turns around and looks at the shelf behind him. Then there is Bran Stark. Tyrion was at Winterfell when it happened. He was there for all of it. The grey, cold hospitality and the Stark children underfoot with their dire wolves. And then one morning the boy was lying in the courtyard with his legs broken beneath him, and everyone said he had been climbing and fallen. Boys fall. It was possible. Tyrion was almost ready to believe it. Almost. He had watched Jaime's face in the hours after they brought the boy in. And Jaime has careless eyes sometimes, eyes that let things through before he has time to stop them. He knows every expression in that face. What he saw in that yard at Winterfell was not grief. It was the flat, held stillness of a man waiting to find out if a calculation is going to hold. Bran Stark saw something worth silencing a child over. There is only one thing in that tower that could have been worth it. He is sitting with the candle again, burning past its midpoint now, the wax pooling in the holder. He thinks about Joffrey as king. He lets the idea sit in his chest and finds out what it feels like. Joffrey at 12, laughing when a man takes a blow. Joffrey at 20, with the full power of the realm in his hands, and no one in a position to say no to him. Joffrey at 30, having grown into whatever that boy is in the process of becoming. Tyrion would not survive a Joffrey kingship. He does not say this to himself with self-pity. It is simply the arithmetic of the situation, the way winter coming is arithmetic. Joffrey has never liked him. A king who dislikes you is a problem you can manage with enough wit and distance. A king who holds you in contempt and has the patience of a boy who has never been denied anything is something else. That kind of king finds reasons. Slowly. Inevitably. He closes the book. He puts it back on the shelf exactly where he found it, in the gap between two larger volumes where no one would notice it. He finishes what is left in his cup and sits in the quiet library as the candle burns down toward nothing. He has not decided anything. He wants to be clear about that with himself. He is simply a man who read a book and then looked out a window, and then thought about things that were none of his concern. But the book is still on the shelf, and the margin notation is still in it, brown and plain and legible for anyone who opens it to the right page. And Joffrey Baratheon is 12 years old and golden-haired in the training yard below, and Jon Arryn is 3 weeks dead, and a boy in Winterfell will never walk again, and none of these things are unconnected. Tyrion gets up. He walks out of the library and down the corridor without looking back. The thought follows him into the dark, patient as a shadow, already waiting for morning. The decision does not arrive the way decisions are supposed to. There is no moment of clarity and resolve, and a man standing tall. There is only Tyrion, in the grey hour before dawn, telling himself he is simply going to have a drink with the king. The rest will follow from there, or it will not. Either way, at least he will have had a good drink. This is a comfortable fiction. He is very good at comfortable fictions. He gives it a full day. He sleeps a few hours and eats, and walks the corridors of the Red Keep and thinks, and by evening he has talked himself into it, and back out of it 4 separate times, and then he stops counting and just goes. He finds Robert in the early evening, before the wine has gotten too deep into him. This is important. Tyrion learned on the road south from the Wall that there is an hour or 2 each evening when Robert Baratheon is neither sober enough to be the king, nor drunk enough to be useless, and in that window he is something like the man he might have been if things had gone differently. Alert. Almost glad of company. Capable of listening to something other than flattery. This is the key to Robert, and most people at court never see it, because they are too busy fearing him. Robert is bored. He has been bored since the moment he took the throne and found out that ruling was nothing like fighting, and the boredom has been eating at him for 17 years, and all the wine in the arbor has not killed it. He does not want counsel. He does not want ceremony or reports, or the careful measured voices of sensible men telling him sensible things. He wants someone who will sit down with him and talk like a person. Tyrion had understood this somewhere between the Wall and King's Landing, and Robert had liked him for it, and it is why Tyrion goes to the king's private chambers tonight, rather than to Ned Stark or the small council or anyone else who might do something cautious with what he is carrying. He goes with the lineages book under one arm and a jug of arbor gold in the other hand. The guard at the door looks at him, the way men look at dwarves who turn up uninvited at important doors. Tyrion gives his name. After a moment, the door opens. Robert is sitting at his table with a cup already in front of him, and the look of a man who is glad to see someone who is not one of his advisers. He is large and going to fat in the way of a soldier who has stopped soldiering, the strength of his younger years buried under years of good food and better wine. His beard is dark with grey beginning to thread through it. His eyes are sharp in a way that the rest of his face is not, quick and watchful, still capable of filling a room with something dangerous when something wakes them. Tyrion Lannister. He leans back in his chair. Gods have a sense of humour. So I have always found. I brought wine. Robert looks at the jug, then at the book. That's not wine. No, that's the reason I'm here. Tyrion sits. He opens the book to the marked page and slides it across the table. I want to show you something. Right here. This column. Robert looks at it. He does not reach for it. What am I reading? The Baratheon family line. 8 generations. Tyrion taps the column of physical descriptions running beside each name. Read what it says here. Every entry. Robert leans forward. He reads the way a soldier reads, methodically, because the information is in front of him, and ignoring things in front of you is how men get killed. He gets halfway down the page. His expression does not change, but something goes still behind it. Black, he says. Not quite a question. All of them. Keep going. Robert reads further. The legitimate heirs, the bastards, the by-blows and the forgotten sons. Generation after generation, the same notation, repeated with the dull insistence of a fact that does not care whether anyone wants to know it. When is the last time a fair-haired child was born to your house? Tyrion asks. He keeps his voice casual, the tone of a man asking something idle at the end of a long day. On either side of the sheets. Robert does not answer. He turns the page. He turns it back. Tyrion picks up his cup and waits. Jon Arryn was reading that book, Tyrion says, when the silence has had enough time to breathe. Before he died, the attendants remembered it. Robert looks up. Just for a moment. There are bastards of yours in this city, Tyrion continues. I know of at least two. A boy at a blacksmith's forge, dark-haired and strong-jawed, your look on him clear as anything. A babe still nursing at a brothel off the Street of Silk. Same look, same hair. Jon Arryn and Lord Stannis found them before you sent for Ned Stark. That was what the investigation was, checking the pattern, making certain of it before they moved. Robert's jaw is set. Jon Arryn's last words were, "The seed is strong." Tyrion says it quietly. 3 words. The attendant heard them and did not know what they meant. I have spent the better part of 2 days working it out. He taps the open page. I believe I know now. The room is very quiet. Outside the window, King's Landing goes on being King's Landing, indifferent as it always is to whatever happens inside the castle above it. Robert looks at him. Not at the book. At him. The look strips away the performance of ease and the jug of wine and everything else, and is simply a man reading another man's face to find out if he is lying. All 3, he says. All 3. Robert sets his cup down. He sets it down with careful deliberation, the way a man makes sure his hands do something controlled. The stillness that settles over him afterward is not the stillness of absence. It is the stillness of a great deal of force holding in place, the way a river moves fastest and says nothing when it is deepest. It is the stillness of the trident before the warhammer came down. He does not speak for a long moment. Tyrion lets him have it. There is one other thing, Tyrion says at last. Robert waits. The Stark boy. Bran. Something moves in Robert's face when he hears the name. It means something to him. He rode north to ask Ned Stark to serve as his hand. He sat at Ned's table and ate his bread and spent 3 days in a castle full of grey-eyed children and cold courtesy. Bran Stark is not an abstraction to him. He is a boy he saw. They said he fell from a tower. Climbing accident. It was plausible. Bran climbs. Everyone said so. And boys fall. Tyrion looks at the table. But the tower he fell from is not one a boy climbs for the view. And I was at Winterfell that morning. I saw the faces. I saw one face in particular that did not look surprised, the way a man looks surprised when a child he knew falls from a height. He does not say the name. He does not need to. He lets the shape of it exist between them, and trusts Robert to be what he is, which is not a stupid man, whatever else he is. Bran saw something, Tyrion says. He was 8 years old. He will never walk again. He has not woken, and whatever he saw has been walking the halls of this castle every day since it happened. Robert is looking past the wall now, at something only he can see. Ned Stark was getting there on his own, Tyrion says. He is not a fool. He would have arrived at the same place, eventually. He picks up his cup. I got there faster. That is, in my experience, the one reliable thing I am good for. He drinks. The wine is very good. He has always had a good palate, even when the rest of the world is on fire. Across the table, Robert has not moved. His hands are flat on the table, and his face is doing something that has no clean name. It is not rage yet. Rage is coming. Tyrion can feel it building the way you feel weather building, the pressure dropping, and the air going heavy, and the light changing. But this, the thing before the rage, is something older and quieter, and it is harder to look at. Robert Baratheon loved Lyanna Stark. He loved her the way men love the one thing they cannot have and cannot stop wanting, and he built 15 years of a kingdom on her ghost and told himself whatever he needed to tell himself to get through it. He looked at 3 golden-haired children and called them his, and watched them grow. Tyrion does not say any of this. He does not need to say it. Robert looks across the table at him. He holds his cup in one hand without raising it. "Leave the book," he says. Tyrion stands. He leaves the book. 3 hours pass after Tyrion leaves. The book sits on the king's table. Robert does not read it again. He knows what it says. He paces instead, the length of his chambers and back, the boards groaning under him. And he does not drink, which is how Ned Stark knows something is wrong when he arrives. Ned comes because the guard at the door has the look of a man standing watch outside a storm. He knocks. He enters. He finds the king at the window, and when Robert turns around, Ned sees something in his face that he has never seen there before, not in 17 years of knowing this man, not through wars or losses or the long grey years of a reign that satisfied nothing. It is not rage. It is the thing that lives underneath rage when a man is holding it with both hands. "Sit down," Robert says. "I need you to hear something." Ned sits. He listens. He does not speak until Robert finishes. Then he is quiet for a moment, looking at the table between them. "I know," he says. Robert looks at him. "I had been getting there on my own. The book, the faces of the children, Jon Arryn's death." Ned pauses. "I was a day or 2 from coming to you with it. You knew. I suspected. I had not yet proven it." A long silence. Robert looks out the window at the city below, the torches and the distant sounds of people who have no idea what is happening in the castle above them. When he speaks again, his voice is very quiet. "I want to speak to Cersei. Tonight. In the throne room." Ned does not say what a cautious man might say. He does not suggest waiting for morning, or for the small council, or for the proper daylight shape of a formal proceeding. He can hear in Robert's voice that the decision is made, and he has known this man long enough to know what that sounds like. "I'll be there," Ned says. Cersei comes without hurrying. She arrives 15 minutes later, in a gown she has clearly dressed into deliberately, her golden hair smooth, her green eyes moving across the throne room in the first instant of entering to read what the room contains. The king before the Iron Throne, the hand of the king near the far wall. No council, no witnesses, the white-cloaked guard dismissed to the corridor outside. She takes this in, and she keeps her face still. She has been keeping her face still for 17 years. She is very good at it. She has rehearsed this conversation in the back of her mind for longer than she can name, the way soldiers rehearse retreats they never intend to use. She did not expect it to arrive in the middle of the night on the word of a dwarf, but she prepared for it all the same. She is always prepared. It is the one thing she has always had. The throne room stretches long and cold at this hour, the torches burning in their brackets, and the iron throne at the far end, crouching in its own shadow like something that has been waiting since Aegon forged it from 1,000 surrendered swords. Robert stands in front of it with the lineages book in one hand, and Ned Stark stands apart from both of them, and the only sound is Cersei's footsteps crossing the stone. "Your Grace," she says. Her voice is perfectly even. Robert does not answer that. He opens the book to the marked page and holds it out to her. "Tell me why every Baratheon in 8 generations has black hair." Cersei looks at the page. She takes her time looking at it. Then she looks at Robert. "Children don't always take after their fathers," she says. "You know that. Joffrey has my colouring. So do Marcella and Tommen. It runs in families, one parent over the other. A Meister's notation column doesn't prove anything." "Every bastard too," Robert says. "Every byblow of every generation going back to the founding of the house. Black, regardless of the mother." "An interesting pattern," Cersei says. "Not a crime." Robert opens the book to a second page. He holds it out. She reads it. Ned watches her read it. He watches the small muscle at the corner of her jaw pull tight once, briefly, before she controls it. Robert takes the book back. He closes it. He sets it down on the arm of the iron throne behind him. Then he overturns the table. It goes over with a crash that fills the room. A cup skids across the stone and shatters against a pillar. Robert steps back from it. His hands are fists. He breathes once, through his teeth. 17 years. He does not look at Cersei. He is looking at the floor, at the upturned table, at nothing. 17 years at that table. 17 years in that bed, smiling at me. Both of you. He lifts his head, smiling. Cersei does not step back. Her chin lifts slightly. "I was a young man," Robert says. The quiet in his voice is worse than any volume. "I loved someone who died in a tower in Dawn. I grieved. I took the throne because there was no one else to take it. And I came home with a wife, and 3 children followed. And I thought." He stops. The word hangs there. "I thought." "Robert." Her voice is careful, measured. The voice of a woman who has rehearsed this conversation in her mind more times than anyone will ever know. "You have a book. You have a theory. You are standing in a throne room at night on the word of a dwarf who arrived with wine and an agenda, and I am telling you that what you are thinking is not what happened." "Joffrey." Just the name. He looks at her. "Joffrey does not look like me. He does not look like my father. He does not look like any man on any page in that book." He picks the book up again, and then sets it back down, because his hands are doing something he does not want them to do. "He has never looked like me, and I held him when he was an hour old. I was drunk. I was glad. I looked at his face, and I told myself it was the light. Then I told myself it was the Lannister blood running strong. Then I told myself, children are strange and take their own shape in their own time. He is very quiet. I told myself something different every year for 12 years. Found a new reason every time I needed one." "Stop," Cersei says. "All 3 of them." Robert's voice is rising now, the quiet giving way. "All 3 golden-haired children in my house, and not one face among them that has a single thing of mine in it. And I told myself. I kept telling myself." He turns away from her and drives his fist into the wall, once, hard. He does not seem to notice. Ned moves. He does not rush. He steps to the center of the room between them, and he keeps his voice below the level the guards outside can hear. "Your Grace." Robert looks at him. His chest is heaving. "Not like this," Ned says. This is not how a king acts on something this serious. This is how a man acts, and you have every right to act like a man. But not tonight in this room with no witnesses and no record and nothing at the end of it, but consequences you cannot take back. He holds Robert's gaze. She needs to face what she has done. That means a proceeding, evidence, witnesses. It means it comes out in the light where it cannot be denied or unmade. Do it right, Robert. You will want to have done it right. He pauses. And there is John Arryn. That man was your friend for 30 years. He died finding this out. If you want to honor him, do what he couldn't do. Bring it into the light, properly. Robert is very still. He is looking at Ned with the expression of a man who has just been told something painful that he already knows. You always say the right thing, Robert says. It does not entirely sound like a compliment. Someone has to. A long moment. Then Robert turns away from Cersei. He does not look at her again. He walks to the door and opens it. The Queen goes to Maegor's hold fast tonight. He says it to the captain of the guard without raising his voice. Under guard. She does not leave without my order. Joffrey goes to his chambers. Same. He pauses. No ravens leave this city, not one. I don't care who is sending them or where they are going. No ravens. He steps back from the door. His eyes find Ned. I want the Master of Whisperers here within the hour. The guards move in around Cersei. She stands for a moment in the middle of the throne room, looking at her husband's back. Something crosses her face, too quickly for Ned to read. Then she lets them take her. The sound of her footsteps recedes down the corridor. The great door of the throne room closes, and Robert stands with his back to the Iron Throne in the guttering orange light, and he is the most alone-looking king Ned Stark has ever seen. Ned stays. He does not say anything. He looks at the upturned table on the floor, and the shattered cup and the Iron Throne sitting in its shadow behind the king. Robert has never been comfortable on that throne. Ned has known him for more than 20 years, and in all of those years he has never once seen the man sit at ease in it. He wonders if that is the only thing Robert ever got right. Sometimes staying is enough. The Raven arrives at Casterly Rock before dawn on the second day. The Maester brings it to the Solar without being told to, because he has served at Casterly Rock for 11 years and understands that anything bearing the hand seal does not wait for morning. Tywin Lannister reads the letter once. He reads it again. Then he folds it and sets it on the table and sits with it for a long moment, a bald man with gold side whiskers and pale green eyes, and the bearing of a man who learned decades ago that he does not need to move to fill a room. He does not call for Kevin. He does not summon the Maester back. He sits very still in the way of a man who has just completed a calculation and is confirming the result before he acts on it. Then he gets up and goes to the window. Casterly Rock falls away beneath him in the early dark, the great gold-veined stone face of it dropping to the western coast below. The sunset sea flat and black at the edge of the world. His family has held this rock for 300 years. They held it before the Targaryens, and they will hold it after. The gold mines made them rich. The gold mines are now nearly played out, which only Kevin and the Maester of the Accounts knows, and the name is what is left. The name is what was always going to be what is left. He looks at the folded letter on the table. Cersei. He says the name in his mind, the way one names a liability that has finally proven itself beyond recovery. He has suspected this was possible for a long time. He chose not to investigate because investigation would have forced a decision, and he was not yet certain the cost was worth it. Now the cost has been decided for him, which is almost a relief. He knows what to do with a cost that has already been decided. He does not feel grief the way other men feel grief. He has not felt things the way other men feel things since his wife died and left him alone with 3 children and a house to hold. And that was a long time ago. What he feels now is something colder and more precise, the way an architect feels when he identifies a crack in a foundation. He notes it, he measures it, he determines exactly what must come down. He summons Kevin. Kevin reads the letter, standing up. When he finishes, he sets it on the table and waits, which is what he always does, because he has spent his life working alongside Tywin and understands that Tywin's silences are not empty. "Tell me what you are thinking," Tywin says. Kevin is quiet for a moment. "That it is worse than anything I prepared for." He pauses, "and that you have already decided what to do." "Yes. She is your daughter." Tywin looks at him. "She was my daughter when she was serving this house," he says. "For 16 years she has been doing the opposite." He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. His voice at its quietest carries better than most men's shouting. "If I stand behind her now, every lord in the 7 kingdoms will spend the next generation saying that House Lannister put a bastard on the throne, that we deceived the crown, that we used the succession of the realm as a weapon for our own ambitions. They will say that the Lannisters are the family that smiled at the king across his own table while they made him a cuckold." He pauses. "We have survived wars. We have survived 3 claimants to the throne and the death of our gold mines and kings who meant us ruin. We cannot survive being the house that cannot be trusted." Kevin says nothing. He knows this tone. "The Rains of Castamere," Tywin says. Lord Rain believed that because he was powerful and connected to the family by marriage, there were things I would not do to him. He was wrong. The song they sing about it is not a song about cruelty. He picks up the letter. It is a song about clarity, about the fact that there are no exceptions, not for power, not for family, not for sentiment. Cersei is not Lord Rain. No, Tywin says. What she has done is considerably worse. Lord Rain defied me openly. He was at least honest about it. He sets the letter down. "I am going to King's Landing. Today." Kevin looks at him. "What will you do there?" "What needs to be done?" He picks up his gloves from the table. "Make ready. We ride within the hour. 24 men. No banners." They ride hard and they ride lean. Tywin Lannister does not travel the way lords travel, with great trains of supply wagons and household retinue and the slow parade of consequence. He travels the way he does everything, efficiently and without excess, and he arrives at the gates of King's Landing well ahead of any expected time. The gate captain sends word ahead. By the time Tywin dismounts in the yard of the Red Keep, Ned Stark is already there, waiting with the measured composure of a man who was told to expect trouble and prepared for it. He takes Tywin in with a single grey-eyed look, the look of a man assessing the weather. "Lord Lannister." Ned inclines his head. "The king will see you." "The small council chamber," Tywin says. "Within the hour, I want the council present." "I can arrange that." "Thank you." He says it without warmth, but also without the deliberate cold he gives to enemies. Ned Stark is not his enemy. Ned Stark tells kings what they do not want to hear, which is something Tywin has always found more valuable than comfortable. The small council chamber has high windows and a long table and a collection of men who are very good at keeping their faces still. Robert sits at the head of it. He has not slept properly in 2 days, and it shows in the set of his jaw and the flatness of his eyes. But he is present, and he is listening, and that is what matters. Ned Stark takes his place, The rest of the council settles in around the table and watches Tywin walk to the near side of it and stand. He does not sit. He has never found it useful to look smaller than he is. "I am here," he says, "to formally sever House Lannister from the actions of Cersei, formerly of House Lannister, in front of this council and the king, so that it is witnessed and recorded, and cannot be disputed afterward." He names the acts. He does not spare language. He says adultery with a sworn member of the king's guard, whose oath to the king makes it not merely adultery, but treason against the crown. He says conspiracy to defraud the crown by presenting as legitimate heirs 3 children who carry no Baratheon blood. He says 16 years of deliberate deception of the king. He says each of these things in the same voice, the same register, with the same precise flatness, the way a man reads from a ledger of losses, each item weighed and noted and accepted. There is no performance in it. There is no drama. There is only a man doing what he has always done, which is choosing the survival of the house over everything else, with perfect clarity and no hesitation. He does not look at Robert while he speaks. This is not accident. This is the one mercy he allows himself, or perhaps the one mercy he allows Robert, which is the same thing. When he is finished, he sits down. He folds his hands on the table in front of him and looks at the far wall and waits. The chamber is quiet. Robert is looking at him from across the table, has been looking at him since he stood up, with the expression of a man who always knew this day was theoretically possible and is finding the reality of it somewhat different from the theory. "You came all the way from Casterly Rock," Robert says, "in 2 days. To say that. I came to say it clearly and in front of witnesses so that the record is clean." Tywin meets his eyes without discomfort. "We have never been friends, Your Grace. We have been useful to each other, which is a more reliable arrangement. If this house is to remain useful to you, it cannot be the house that did this. So it is not." Robert is quiet for a moment. He looks at Tywin across the table with the expression of a man who has been a king for 17 years and has sat across tables from a great many dangerous and complicated people, and who is finding, at the end of a very long 2 days, that simplicity is an unexpected relief. He nods. Once. Slowly. "Accepted," he says. Tywin inclines his head. Not a bow, a receipt. The deed is now witnessed and recorded, and part of the permanent record of the realm. The damage is bounded. The house will survive this, because the house always survives, because he will not allow it to do otherwise. He picks up his gloves from where he set them on the table and turns them in his hands, and the small council watches him do it. And no one speaks, and the chamber holds the particular silence of men who have just witnessed something that will be spoken of for a very long time. Robert wants him dead. He says it plainly, without raising his voice, the way a man states a requirement after he has run out of patience for everything else. The small council has been in session for the better part of an hour when he puts his fist on the table and says it, and the chamber goes very quiet. "He was my king's guard," Robert says. "He was sworn to me, to my family. What he did is not adultery. Adultery I could set aside. What he did is treason, and there is one penalty for treason, and every man in this room knows what it is." Ned Stark does not look away from the king's face. "Your Grace, killing the Lord Commander of the King's Guard without a formal proceeding would send a message to every knight in every hall in the 7 kingdoms about what a sworn oath to the crown is worth. They would see a man condemned and executed without record or evidence or due process, and they would wonder what it means that even the highest sworn office in the realm can be ended in a night by a king's anger. He keeps his voice level. "We need to do this properly. He fathered 3 children on my wife while wearing my cloak. Yes, and he can answer for it properly in front of witnesses with the weight of law behind it. Otherwise it is simply a man being killed, and that is not what this needs to be." Robert stares at the table. He hates this. It is visible, the hating. He looks across at Tywin. Tywin has been seated since the session began and has said nothing, which in itself is a kind of statement. He speaks now with the measured precision of a man who has already done this calculation in full. "Jaime cannot inherit Casterly Rock," he says. "The Kingsguard oath stripped him of that right when he was 16. He holds no lands, no title, no wife, no children in the eyes of the law. He is legally nothing more than a sworn sword who violated his charge." He lets that settle for a moment. His execution satisfies your anger. It does not satisfy order. A man with no inheritance and no legal standing and no line of succession to his name is already dead in every way that matters to the realm. What the wall provides is the same outcome, witnessed and permanent, without the complication of executing the Lord Commander of your own Kingsguard and inviting every question that comes with it. The chamber is quiet. "The Night's Watch oath is sworn for life," Tywin says. "No land, no wife, no children. He will go to the wall, and he will remain there until he dies. No one in the 7 Kingdoms will misread what it means that Jaime Lannister is standing a watch on the northern ice for the rest of his years." Robert is very still. Ned watches the moment when the anger meets the argument and the argument carries it. Not cleanly, not without cost, but finally. "Bring him in," Robert says. Jaime Lannister walks into the small council chamber in chains, and the first thing Ned notices is that he does not walk like a man in chains. He walks like a man who has decided the weight around his wrists is beneath his attention. He is golden-haired and green-eyed, and he holds himself straight, and at 32 years old he looks exactly like what he has always been, which is one of the finest swords in Westeros. And the room feels his presence the way rooms always feel his presence, which is slightly smaller and slightly more alert. He reads the faces around the table without appearing to. He looks at Robert. He looks at Ned. He looks at Tywin. He looks at his father for a long moment. His father does not look back. Tywin is looking at the far wall with the expression of a man attending to something that requires his full attention, and there is nothing on the far wall. There is nothing at all on the far wall. Jaime holds this for a breath, then another. The set of his face does not change, but something passes through it that is too brief to name, something that has the shape of a door closing, and when it is over he looks at Robert, and his face is entirely composed again. He has understood. Robert stands. He comes around the end of the table and stops in front of Jaime, and the two of them are close enough that the chains make a small sound between them. Robert is taller and broader. Jaime is younger and sharper. They look at each other the way men look at each other, when they have a long history they are not going to speak about. Then Robert reaches out. He takes the white cloak by the shoulder and pulls. The pin gives after a moment, and the cloak comes free across Robert's arm, the white of it bright against his dark sleeve. He holds it for a moment, looking at Jaime's face. Then he drops it on the table. "You are no longer a member of my Kingsguard," Robert says. "You will be taken to the wall under guard. You will take the oath. You will remain there." Jaime looks at him. He does not argue. He does not beg. He does not explain himself, which is something he has never done about anything, and he is not going to start in a room full of men who have already decided. He says only, "At least I'll finally get some quiet." Robert looks at him for a moment longer. Then he turns away. The guards move in on either side, and Jaime is taken from the chamber, and the white cloak lies on the table where Robert set it, and no one moves to pick it up for a long time. They bring the news to Cersei in Maegor's Holdfast an hour later. She reads it standing, in the way she reads everything now, standing near the narrow window, with the light falling across the page. When she finishes, she folds the parchment and holds it in both hands and looks at the wall across from her. She has been controlled and cold since the night they took her from the throne room. Every morning, she has woken in this room and put the composure on the way she puts on a gown, carefully, starting with the small things and working outward. She has done this for 2 weeks. She has been very good at it. This is the thing that breaks through the composure. Not the disownment, though that hit like a blade between the ribs. Not her title being taken, or her freedom being taken, or Robert's face when he turned away from her in the throne room. Those things she was ready for, in the way she had always been ready, because she had always known this was possible and had rehearsed it in the back of her mind for 17 years. She was not ready for this. They bring her children to her for an hour, which is the only mercy anyone has extended. Joffrey comes in first, and he is furious, which is the only thing he knows how to be when the world refuses to arrange itself as it should. He is 12 years old and golden-haired, and his jaw is set, and his green eyes are hot, and he stands in the doorway looking at his mother with the look of someone who expects an explanation and a solution, and doesn't understand why neither is coming. Myrcella follows him in. She is 9 years old, and she has her mother's hair and her mother's eyes, and she does not say anything when she enters, which is more unsettling than anything Joffrey's fury could manage. She watches. She has always watched everything, this child, with a quietness that her brother never had, and she watches her mother now, and does not ask the questions that are clearly behind her eyes. Tommen comes in last, and he is already crying. He is 8 years old, and no one has told him the facts of what has happened, but he has felt them the way small children feel everything they are not supposed to feel, through walls and whispers and the look on the faces of the adults around him. He walks across the room without hesitating, and puts his arms around his mother and presses his face into her side. Cersei holds him. She puts her arms around her youngest child, and she holds him, and she looks over the top of his head at Joffrey's burning eyes, and Myrcella's watching ones, and the closed door beyond them, and she does not try to explain anything, because there is nothing she can say that is both true and useful. Everything that is true will break something. Everything that is useful is no longer true. So she holds Tommen, and the guards are outside the door, and Jaime is in chains on his way to the ice, and her father has spoken her name out of the family the way you speak a word you are finished with, and for 1 hour in Maegor's Holdfast, with her youngest child crying into her shoulder, she does not calculate anything at all. The question of the children comes before the council on the 3rd day. It is entered on the record without ceremony. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were not born of Robert Baratheon's blood. By the laws of succession that have governed the 7 kingdoms since Aegon's conquest, children born outside legitimate marriage to a man of the house cannot inherit the throne, cannot carry the house name, and cannot stand in the succession line. The law is not ambiguous on the point. The law has never needed to be. What the law does not cover is what to do with them after. The council sits with that silence for a while before Robert speaks. He is standing again, the way he has stood for most of the sessions this week, one hand on the back of his chair and the other flat on the table. And when he speaks, the voice is not the voice of a king working through a legal problem. It is the voice of a man who held 3 children and named them and watched them grow and is now required to account for that. I called him my heir, Robert says. He is not looking at anyone. He is looking at the document on the table with the 3 names on it. 12 years I called him my heir. I stood over him when he was an hour old in that room, and I held him and I named him Joffrey, after my mother's family, because that is what you do when you have a son. You give him a piece of what you came from. He stops. He breathes. I did the same for the girl, for Tommen. I held all 3 of them and I said, mine. The chamber is quiet. The torches burn in the brackets. Outside the window the city goes on not knowing. I cannot look at them, Robert says, quieter now, and this is the worst of it, the quiet. I look at their faces, and I see his face in every feature, and I think of every year I spent looking at those faces and deciding not to see what I was seeing. 12 years of deciding not to see. He picks up the document and holds it without reading it. They have his eyes, all 3 of them, his eyes and his hair and his jaw, and I stood in rooms with them, and I called them my children, and I believed it, because I needed to believe it. I sat at that boy's bedside when he had fever. I watched him take his first steps on a horse. I thought there was something of me in him. I built it up, year by year, and the thing I built was nothing. He sets the document down. Tell me what the law requires. The legal position is laid out plainly by one of the council. Bastards cannot inherit. They cannot carry a house name not their own by blood. The 3 children of Cersei Lannister and Jaime Lannister have no lawful claim to either succession or name. Ned stands. He does not speak immediately. He lets the weight of the legal position sit in the room for a moment before he speaks into it. The faith of the 7 holds that the sin of a parent is the sin of the parent, he says. Children do not inherit guilt. They are born as they are born, and what their parents chose is not a thing the children chose, and that principle is older than this kingdom and older than this council. He looks at Robert. Joffrey is 12 years old. Myrcella is 9. Tommen is 8. None of them knew what they were. None of them chose it. None of them did anything except exist, which is not a crime. He pauses. What kind of king punishes children for what their mother did? Robert says nothing. What kind of man, Ned says, punishes children for what their mother did? The difference between those 2 questions lands differently, and everyone in the room feels it, and Robert most of all. He is quiet for a long time. He sets the document down and looks at his hands on the table, and somewhere behind his eyes, something works through something, and the council waits. Ned watches him and does not push further. He has made the argument he needed to make. The rest belongs to Robert, who has to be the one to decide this, and who has to live with whatever he decides, and who is working through it in the way Robert works through hard things, which is slowly and with visible effort, and usually in the right direction when it matters. They will not be harmed, Robert says finally. They did not do this. They did not do anything. He straightens up from the table. They will lose the name. They will lose the succession. Those are not punishments. Those are facts of law, and I cannot change what the law is, nor would I if I could, because the law exists for reasons. He looks at the ceiling for a moment, then back down. But they will not be imprisoned. They will not be tried. They will go with their mother to the faith's care, a mother house somewhere, and they will be given time. In time they will have new names, and they will have lives. He pauses. That is every bit of it. Anything more is not justice. He looks at Ned once. Ned holds his gaze and says nothing, because there is nothing to say. This is the decision he argued for. He is not going to spoil it by being right about it. The decision is entered into the record. Sansa Stark learns of it from her scepter, who finds her in the solar of the Hand's apartments in the late afternoon, and sits across from her with the particular expression of an adult who has been tasked with delivering news to a young person, and is trying to determine the kindest order in which to say the words. She uses phrases like, changed circumstances, and the betrothal is dissolved, and you will understand when you are older, my lady. Sansa sits very still through all of it. Her face is polite. She says yes. She understands. Thank you, Scepter. She is fine. She waits for the scepter to leave. Then she sits alone in the solar for a while, with her hands in her lap, looking at the window. She has been reading songs about queens since she was old enough to read. She knows the reigns of Castamere and the age of heroes, and the great romantic stories of ladies and their lords, and the courts they were mistresses of. She came south to be part of one of those stories. The crown prince was going to grow into someone better, because in the songs the difficult boy becomes the great man, and she was patient, and she told herself patience was what the story required. What the songs do not cover is a moment like this, that the crown prince was never who he was supposed to be in the story, that the queen she was going to become does not exist anymore, that the story she thought she was inside was built on a lie that someone else told before she was born, and none of it was ever going to be what she wanted it to be. She thinks about Joffrey's face when he was angry, which was most of the time. She thinks about coming south on the King's Road with her head full of the capital and the court and the life she was going to have. She had imagined it so many times, the throne room and the feasts and the lords bowing and her standing beside a king who loved her, and it had kept her warm on cold nights in Winterfell when the wind came off the mountains and the fire went low. She thinks about how carefully she had arranged the story in her mind, how she had told herself Joffrey would become better when he was older, that the cruelty was something boys grew out of, that she was patient enough to wait for the version of him that would exist in 5 years. She had told herself that story so many times that she had come to believe it was actually a story about her patience, her grace, her worth, and not just about a boy she had never liked. She does not cry. Not here, not where a servant might pass through and see her eyes. She has already learned, in the weeks since leaving Winterfell, that she cannot choose most of what happens to her, but she can choose what she shows, and she is not going to show this to anyone. She sits with her hands in her lap and her face still, and looks at the rooftops of King's Landing spread out below the window, and she thinks, I am a slow learner. But I learn. The letter arrives at Dragonstone on the 4th morning, carried by a raven that lands on the Maester's window ledge before dawn and waits there without restlessness, as though it understands the nature of what it carries and is in no hurry to be rid of it. Stannis Baratheon reads it once in the Maester's tower, standing, because sitting would imply he was prepared for what it contained, and he was not. He reads it again. Then he folds it with the particular precision of a man who has learned to keep his hand still while everything else moves, and he tucks it inside his coat and walks back to his solar alone. The solar at Dragonstone is a cold room. It has always been cold. The castle was built by Targaryens, who spent their lives with dragons and found stone walls a poor substitute for warmth. Stannis has lived here for 16 years, and he has never once found the room warm, and he has never once complained about it, because complaints are a luxury he has never allowed himself, and because a cold room is simply a cold room, and what a man does in it is the only thing that matters. He sits at the table with his maps and his sealed correspondence and the letter still inside his coat, and for a long moment he does not move. Davos comes in, because Davos always senses when something has shifted, which is one of the reasons Stannis keeps him close. He is honest, which is a rarer quality than it should be. He asks questions that need asking, and does not flinch from the answers. "My lord," Davos says, from the door. Stannis takes the letter out and sets it on the table. He does not offer it. Davos reads what he is meant to read in Stannis's face, which is not much, but it is enough. "The children," Stannis says. "The letter confirms it. Tyrion Lannister went to Robert with the Book of Lineages, Jon Arryn's investigation. The same thing I wrote to Jon Arryn about 2 years ago." He pauses. He believed it now. Davos is quiet for a moment. What does the letter say about the succession? Nothing directly, which tells me everything directly. Stannis looks at the maps without seeing them. "The council has not written to me. That is the letter they are not sending. The one where they acknowledge that under every law governing inheritance in the 7 kingdoms, I am now the heir to my brother's throne." His voice is flat. Not angry. Flat in the way of a man who has been angry about this particular thing for so long that the anger has worn down to something harder and more durable. They will find a reason to avoid it. They always find a reason. "Renly," Davos says. "Renly," Stannis agrees. He says his brother's name the way a man names a familiar problem, without heat, without contempt even, just with the weariness of long familiarity. He has more allies on the council. He is better liked. He has always been better liked, since he was old enough to smile at people, which is a skill I was apparently not born with. He stands. He goes to the window. The harbour below is grey in the early light, the water flat and colourless, under a sky that has not yet decided what it wants to do. Liked is not law. Liked does not change who stands next in line. I am Robert's brother. I am the eldest remaining brother. That is not sentiment. That is succession law, as it has been written for 150 years. "You'll need to move quickly," Davos says, "before Renly can—" "I know." Stannis does not say it sharply. He says it the way he says most things, which is simply, with the implication that he has already thought through what Davos is about to say, and he does not need it said aloud. "Send a raven to King's Landing, to Lord Stark, not to Pycelle, not to the council." Stark reads his letters, and he responds to what is actually written in them, rather than to what is politically convenient, which puts him in a small and dwindling category. He turns from the window. "Tell him I expect to be consulted in any matter touching the succession as the king's eldest living brother and heir under the law. Tell him I will come to the city when I am summoned, and not before." Davos nods slowly. "And Renly?" Stannis picks up a small carved figure from the corner of his map table. One of the game pieces he uses when he is working out troop positions, a dark wooden piece worn smooth by handling. He turns it in his fingers once and sets it down. Renly will do what he has always done. He will go to rooms where he is liked and talk to people who like him and wait to see which way the river runs before he commits to a direction. A pause that has something almost like resignation in it, though resignation is not quite the right word for Stannis Baratheon, who does not resign himself to things so much as he simply carries them. He gets that from Robert. He sits back down at the table. He opens the letter one more time and reads it, not looking for anything new, but confirming what he already knows, with the rigor of a man who doesn't trust himself to act on a single reading of an important document. The letter is from Maester Lewin at Winterfell, who has it second-hand from the ravens passing through, and it is accordingly incomplete. It tells him the children have been declared illegitimate. It tells him Cersei Lannister has been confined. It tells him Jaime Lannister, who killed one king and apparently conspired to deceive another for 15 years, is in chains. It does not tell him what Robert intends. It does not tell him what the small council intends. It does not tell him what Ned Stark thinks, which is the piece of information Stannis actually wants, because Ned Stark is the only man in King's Landing whose stated position and actual position are the same. He puts the letter down. He looks at the map of Westeros spread across the table, at the harbours and roads and castles that mean things in terms of armies and supply lines, and the movement of power from one place to another. He has always understood war. He has always been better at war than at the things that come before it and after, the talking and the smiling and the managing of other men's opinions. Robert understood those things. Robert was good at them when he chose to be, which was not always, but was often enough to matter. Renly understands them the way a man understands a language he grew up speaking, without effort, without thought. Stannis understands them the way a man understands a language he studied from a book. He can do it. He is not incompetent at it, but it will always cost him something that it does not cost other people. "Write the letter," he says. "Tell Stark I know the law. Tell him I will wait to be summoned, but I will not wait forever." He looks out the window at the grey harbour. Tell him there are things that should have been done years ago, and were not, and I have no interest in relitigating them. Tell him I am interested in what happens now. Stannis watches the harbour. A fishing boat is coming in from the east, moving against the wind with the patient labour of a vessel that has been out all night and is returning with whatever the sea gave it. He watches it for a while. He thinks about his brother, who is sitting in King's Landing with the ruins of a marriage and 3 children he called his own for 12 years, and now cannot, and who is, for the first time in 20 years, in a position that Robert has no experience handling. Sober, confronting a truth he cannot ride away from, he wonders if Robert will rise to it. He wonders this genuinely, without contempt, which is something he has not done in years. It is possible. Robert was capable of things, when he chose to be, that nobody expected of him. The rebellion was not won by a man who was incapable of rising to things. The rebellion was won by exactly the man Robert was before the throne took him apart. Stannis does not know if that man is still in there. But he thinks, watching the fishing boat come in against the grey water, that the last 2 weeks may be the kind of thing that finds out. Behind him, Davos finishes the letter and sets down the quill. "It's done," Davos says. "Good," Stannis says. He does not turn from the window. "Send it quickly." The boat reaches the harbour. Men on the dock catch the ropes. The work of the morning goes on around it, in the ordinary way, without drama, without ceremony, because most of the world does not know that anything has changed, and even the parts that do know will still need to eat. Stannis picks up the letter one final time. He reads it a 3rd time, and then he folds it for good and sets it aside with the finality of a man closing a door he does not intend to open again. He knows what it says. He knows what it means. He has always known, with the patient certainty of a man who has been right about a thing for a very long time and has learned to carry the rightness quietly, that this moment would come. It has come. He is ready. The trial begins not with thunder or proclamation, but with a clerk reading from parchment in a voice trained to empty itself of judgment, because judgment is the council's job and not his, and he takes that distinction seriously. Cersei sits with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap and listens to the charges the way you listen to a physician describing what is wrong with a body you already know is damaged. The information is not new. The sequence of naming it aloud is what is new, and the difference between a thing everyone knows and a thing that has been formally spoken into the record is the difference between a rumor and a verdict, and Cersei has always understood precisely where that line falls. Adultery, conspiracy against the succession, deception of the crown over a period of years. The clerk does not stumble over a single word. He is very good at his job. The chamber is not large. She had expected something more theatrical. The throne room, perhaps, or some great hall with torches and the court watching in rows. But the council has chosen something smaller, which she thinks is deliberate. A smaller room keeps it contained. A smaller room is about consequences rather than spectacle, and Ned Stark would see no value in spectacle. He would see it as a thing that endangered the dignity of the process, which he would consider a real category worth protecting. This is, she thinks, one of his genuine qualities. It does not make her like him, but she recognizes it. Ned Stark sits at the head of the tribunal. Robert is not here. Robert has not been anywhere he is not required to be for 10 days now, which is itself a kind of answer to a question she has been turning over for 15 years, whether Robert Baratheon ever actually looked at her. She has her answer now. He looked at what he wanted to see, and then he stopped looking. She does not think about Robert. The other chairs at the tribunal hold Lord Renly, who represents the small council, and Maester Pycelle, who is there to keep the record and who will not meet her eyes, which is the cowardice she expected from him, and which she finds she does not even bother to hold against him anymore. Renly looks at her with the polite attention of someone attending a formal event they would prefer not to be at. He has always had that quality, the ability to be physically present in a room while giving nothing of himself to it. She used to think it was self-protection. Now she thinks it is simply what Renly is. Ned Stark reads the charges again himself after the clerk. He does not look away from her when he finishes. He looks at her directly, in the way of a man who has decided that meeting someone's eyes is a form of respect owed regardless of circumstance, and she thinks, despite everything, that she almost respects him for it. She has always known where she stood with Ned Stark, which is something she cannot say about most men who have sat at tables of power near her. "My lady," he says, "do you wish to speak before we proceed?" She has thought about this. She prepared 2 speeches, one for fighting, one for yielding. She stood in her chamber for 4 days, turning each of them over, and on the 5th day understood that neither one was right. "I do not contest the charges," she says. Her voice is level. She has made it level. "I would ask only one thing of this tribunal. Not for myself." She pauses, still deciding, as she has been deciding for days, exactly how much of this she will let show. She decides this much and no more. "For the children. Whatever judgment falls on me, the children should not be made to witness it. They are young. They chose none of this. Let them be spared that." The room is quiet. Ned Stark looks at her. She can see him revising something in his mind, some expectation he had built of what she would do in this room, which is now meeting a different reality. She did not give him the fight he was prepared for. She is not certain whether this is a victory or simply the absence of a particular defeat, and she finds she does not have the energy to decide. The tribunal will take that under advisement, he says. The proceedings last 4 hours. She answers what is asked and adds nothing to her answers, because there is nothing useful to add, and she has no interest in being useful to them. When they ask her whether the relationship was by compulsion or by choice, she says by choice without pausing, because she has never pretended to be weaker than she is, and will not start now, and the room shifts with the particular discomfort of people who expected a more convenient answer and did not receive one. The verdict comes at the end of the 4th hour. 3 judges, 3 private consultations, conducted in low voices at the end of the table while she sits and waits. The verdict is guilty on the first 2 counts, and a lesser finding on the 3rd. She had known the verdict before the consultation began. She has known it since the morning she sat in Maegor's holdfast, with Tommen's weight in her arms, and understood that the thing she had been holding together for 12 years had come apart and was not going to be reassembled. The sentence is exile. She had not expected exile. She had prepared herself for something colder and more permanent, and when Ned Stark reads the sentence, she is, for a moment, genuinely surprised, which is not a thing that happens to her often, and which she doesn't let show. Exile from King's Landing, exile from the 7 kingdoms, permanent removal from any proximity to the throne or its succession. She is to go across the narrow sea to Essos. She is not to return. She sits with her hands in her lap and receives this the way she has received everything else in the past 10 days, without expression, because expression is not something she is going to give this room. She is not to return. She thinks about Tommen. She thinks about his face when she told him this morning that she would not see him again for a long time. He asked her how long, and she said she didn't know. Which was true, and he didn't cry because he has been trying very hard not to cry since the world changed, and she has been watching him try, and it has cost her something she doesn't have a name for. She thinks about Myrcella, who listened and didn't cry, and who has her eyes and something in the set of her jaw that is Cersei at 14, before King's Landing. She thinks about Joffrey, who is 12 years old and furious and will be furious for years, and who will find a way to make a weapon of his fury, because she taught him without meaning to. That fury is something you can arm yourself with, and she is sorry for that. In the particular private way, she is sorry for things that belong to her alone, and that she will not speak aloud. After, a guard walks her back through the corridor. She passes a window, high and narrow, looking out over the city, and stops, because the guard is not unkind, and he lets her. King's Landing in the afternoon. She has lived here for 15 years. She knows the city's smell and the particular quality of its light off the black water at dusk, and the sound it makes when rain falls on the rooftops, and the way the crowds in the market streets move like water, find into the lowest path. She has learned to read this city the way you read a face, what it shows and what it hides, and how it looks when it has forgotten to perform. She knows things about it that it does not know about itself. She turns from the window. She does not cry. She has told herself she will not cry in any corridor of this building, and she has held to that, and she intends to hold to it. There is a ship. There is Essos which is wide and various and full of cities that have no particular opinion about Cersei Lannister, and in that blankness there is something she thinks might be usable. She has always been able to find the angles in unfamiliar places. She has had to. This city has never been as hospitable to her as it looked from the outside, and she has been navigating it without a map since she was 17 years old. She is still Tywin Lannister's daughter. Whatever her father's letter said, whatever formal words he used to remove her name from the house rolls, that is a thing in a document, and she is a thing in the world, and the world has always been more responsive to what people actually are than to what the records say about them. She is intelligent, and she is careful, and she does not make the same mistake twice, and she is going somewhere. No one has decided yet who she is, which is its own kind of resource. She walks. Behind her, the window holds the same city it has always held, going about its afternoon the way it goes about every afternoon, indifferent, enormous, alive, without caring about who watches it from above. She does not look back at it. There is nothing she needs to see that she has not already seen. Ned writes to Catelyn on the evening of the 11th day. He has been writing to her every 3 days since he came south, which is discipline more than sentiment. He believes she should know what is happening, in something close to real time. Not because he is good at letters, because he is not, but because he believes the people who matter to you should not be left to learn things second-hand. He has written to her about Jon Arryn, about the children, about the king's state. He has written each letter like a man filing a report, with the brisk, unsentimental style of someone who does not know how to say, "I am not certain I was right to come here," but who means it in every line. This one is harder. He starts it twice, crosses out the first draft, sits with the quill still in his hand and the ink drying on the nib, and tries to find the accurate thing. The accurate thing about the past 11 days is not short, and none of it is simple, and Catelyn will want the truth, not the managed version of it, because she has always wanted the truth and has never thanked him for anything less. He writes, "The trial is finished. Cersei Lannister is sentenced to exile across the narrow sea and will leave before the month is out." He puts the quill down. He reads those 2 sentences. He picks the quill back up. He writes, "Stannis has written to me." He sets the quill down again and looks at what he has written. Both of those things are true. The connection between them is the thing he is still working out, sitting alone in the Tower of the Hand, with the city going about its evening below the window, and a candle burning down on the table, and the letter from Dragonstone pressed flat under the corner of his inkwell, where he has been looking at it for the better part of 3 hours. Stannis's letter was brief and precise in the way of a man who has a great deal to say, and has edited it down to only what can be verified. It said, "I am the heir under the law." It said, "I expect to be consulted on matters of succession." It said, "I will come when summoned, and not before." It said, in the space between the lines, what Stannis always says in the spaces between his lines, which is, "I have been right about this, and I was ignored, and I am waiting for everyone to notice." Ned had read it and thought, yes. He has thought about that yes for 3 hours. It is not complicated. Stannis is the legitimate heir under succession law, and Ned's nature is organized around the proposition that the forms exist for reasons, and that holding to them, even when it is inconvenient, is what separates order from the kind of chaos that costs ordinary people their lives. He is not going to argue for setting aside the law because Stannis is difficult to like. What he knows about Stannis, that he is right and unbending, and doesn't easily see the difference between being right and being wise, is a separate question from what the law requires, and Ned intends to keep those questions separate. He finishes the letter to Catelyn. He seals it and sets it aside for the morning raven. He does not sleep immediately. In the morning he asks to see Robert. Robert is in his chambers. He is not drinking, or not noticeably, which Ned takes as continued evidence of something he has not yet been able to name. Some change in Robert that may be temporary and may not be. He looks older. He looks, Ned thinks, like a man who has been carrying something heavy and has recently put it down and is now discovering how much it cost him to carry it. Stannis wrote to me, Ned says. I know, Robert says. He wrote to me too. He is sitting by the window, not at the table, which is where Robert sits when he is doing official things and doesn't want to sit at the table doing official things. He wants to be summoned. He is the heir. He is. Robert says it the way he says things he has already decided are true and does not need to argue about. I know what he is. I've always known what he is. Knowing what he is and wanting it are different things. Robert. I know. He turns from the window. He looks at Ned with the face of a man who is being honest, which is not always the face Robert Baratheon wears, but which Ned recognizes when he sees it. I'm not going to do something foolish. I'm past that. What I was thinking was... He stops, starts again. Joffrey trained in that yard for 3 years. He thought he was mine. I watched him and I thought, there is something wrong with that boy. But he is mine, and I will be better with him than my father was with me. He looks at his hands. None of it was true. Any of it. He will be cared for, Ned says. The children will be cared for. They go to Casterly Rock. Tywin's house, Robert says, with something in his voice that is not quite contempt. Where Tywin will make whatever he decides to make of them. He is quiet for a moment. I don't blame the children. Not for any of it. They were 12 and 10 and 7 years old. Whatever they are is what they were made. Ned does not say anything. He waits. Summon Stannis, Robert says. He says it without enthusiasm and without hesitation, which is its own kind of integrity. Summon him. I'll do this correctly. We'll do it formally, with the council, with whatever ceremony the citadel says is needed. He picks up the cup from the side table and then sets it back down without drinking. He'll be a cold king. He'll follow the law and do everything right, and people will hate sitting in the same room with him inside of a year. But he won't burn things down. He looks at Ned. That's not nothing. It's not a nothing, Ned agrees. They sit for a moment with that. Outside, in the yard below, something falls and someone shouts at someone else, and then it is quiet again. Robert reaches into the front of his coat and takes out a folded piece of paper. He holds it without offering it. Jon Arryn, he says. Before he died, he was looking at the children. Not because anyone asked him to. He started looking on his own, a year before he died, and he was careful about it, and quiet about it, and someone found out he was looking. He looks at the paper. Pycelle's had correspondence hidden for 2 years. I've had time to read it. Some of it is nothing. Some of it is the kind of thing that makes you wonder who in this city was paying attention to Jon Arryn's investigation and how quickly they learned about it and what they decided to do. He extends the paper. Ned takes it, unfolds it. A name, one name, written in Robert's hand, which is large and slightly unsteady, the hand of a man who is more accustomed to holding a war hammer than a quill. Peter Baelish. Ned folds the paper. He looks at Robert. He thinks about what he knows of Peter Baelish, which is the careful and imprecise knowledge of a man who has seen someone operating in the same city without ever having reason to study them directly. He thinks about Littlefinger's face, the small, pleased smile that seems to exist independently of any particular cause for pleasure. He thinks about chaos, and about the kind of man who profits from it, and about the particular advantage of being the least likely person in any room. "I'll find out what there is to find," Ned says. Robert nods. He looks at the cup again, and this time picks it up and drinks, just once, and sets it back down with a small, deliberate click. "You always do," he says. "That's the only reason I can ask you to stay." Ned stands. He puts the paper in his coat. He goes to the door, and then he stops, because there is one more thing, and there is no comfortable way to say it, so he says it directly. "Sansa is here," he says. "She is watching all of this. I want to send her home before anything else happens." Robert is quiet for a long moment. "Then send her home," he says. "This city is no place for a child who is watching it learn what it is." Ned goes out. The door closes. He stands in the corridor outside the king's chambers and holds the paper in his coat through the cloth and thinks about Jon Arryn, who died believing he was about to change something, and about the name on the paper, and about the specific and patient kind of dangerous that a man can be when he is content to go unnoticed. He will not go unnoticed. Not for long. Ned walks back toward the Tower of the Hand, and the city moves around him in the ordinary way of a city that does not know what is coming, which is the only way a city ever moves. The sentence reaches Tyrion the same way most news reaches him in King's Landing, which is through a chain of people who each added something to it in passing. A guardsman who told a servant who told another servant who told the woman in whose establishment Tyrion has been spending his evenings since the world came apart. By the time the news arrives, it has been through enough hands that the facts are intact, but the emotional coloring around them belongs entirely to the person doing the telling. "Exile," she says. She has a practical face and a talent for delivering information without drama, which is one of the things Tyrion values about her. They're sending her across the narrow sea, not the block. Tyrion sits with that for a moment. He is in a chair near the window with a cup in his hand that he has not touched in some time. Outside, the city makes its evening noises, which are loud and do not care about anything that has happened in the rooms above them. "Not the block," he says. "Not the block." He looks at his cup. He thinks about Cersei, who is in Maegor's holdfast, or wherever they are keeping her now, receiving a sentence she did not expect. He thinks about what exile means. It means alive. It means across the narrow sea, to some city that will not know her name, or will not know what the name means yet. And she will find a way to make that work, because Cersei always finds a way to make things work. And the fact that this is true about her is one of the few things he has ever genuinely respected about his sister, and it does not make him like her. He does not drink the wine. He sets the cup on the windowsill and looks at the lights of the city going on below him in the dark. He has been thinking about the book. He has been thinking about it since the night he carried it out of the library, which was 11 days ago, which is long enough that the decision should feel settled, and it does not feel settled. He does not regret it. He is fairly certain he does not regret it. He told himself when he picked up that book that he was simply going to have a drink with the king, and the rest would follow, and the rest followed, and the world is now entirely different from the world it was 11 days ago, and he is the reason for that. And he is sitting in a chair trying to determine whether what he feels about that is guilt or something else. It is not guilt, exactly. He has felt guilt before, about specific and concrete things, and it has a particular texture that this does not have. What this has is weight, a different thing. The weight of understanding that you did the correct thing, and that the correct thing had consequences that are large and cannot be undone, and that living with those consequences is simply what it means to have done the thing at all. Jaime is in chains on a ship to the wall. He thinks about that. He thinks about Jaime the way he always thinks about Jaime, which is with a complicated love that has several different things mixed into it, and which has never resolved itself into something simpler, despite decades of opportunity. Jaime is the person who was kind to him when almost no one else was, who treated him like a person rather than a problem to be managed, who came to find him in the dark when he was young and frightened, and said things that were not true, but were what was needed. He is also a man who spent 15 years lying about whose children he was fathering, and who put 3 false heirs between Stannis Baratheon and the throne of the 7 kingdoms, and who knew, every year of those 15 years, exactly what he was doing. Tyrion does not believe Jaime is evil. He has thought about this carefully, and he does not believe it. He believes Jaime loves Cersei, in the way that some people love things that are not good for them, and that a man can love something destructive and still be capable of kindness, and that neither of those things cancels the other out. He also believes that the consequences of what Jaime did are real, and that Jaime is the one who will carry them, and that this is simply how accountability works, and that not liking it does not change it. He believes all of this. It does not make it easier. He goes to the window. The city below is the same city it has always been, alive and indifferent, and somewhere in it, Cersei Lannister is sitting with an exile sentence, and 3 children she is about to leave behind, and somewhere in the harbour, a ship is docked that will eventually carry her to Essos, and somewhere in the Red Keep Ned Stark is probably writing careful letters in his careful hand and thinking carefully about what needs to happen next. Tyrion has a letter from his father. It arrived 3 days ago. It is brief in the way that Tywin Lannister's letters are brief, which is not brief from economy of words, so much as brief from the specific compression of a man who says only what he requires you to hear, and trusts you to fill in everything else. It says, "Come home." It says, "The matter is concluded as well as it could be concluded, given the circumstances." It says nothing about what Tyrion did or why he did it, or whether Tywin approves, because approving or disapproving is not a frame Tywin Lannister applies to things that have already happened. Things have happened, or they have not. The calculation going forward is what matters. Come home. He will go home. He has already decided this. There is nothing left for him here. The deed is done. The king has the truth. The council has made what decisions it is going to make, and King's Landing has moved on from the crisis to the management of the crisis's aftermath, which is less interesting and which does not require him. He will go home to Casterly Rock, and he will deal with his father in the way he always deals with his father, which is carefully and with a great deal of prepared patience and a contingency plan for when the patience runs out. He is not afraid of his father's reception. This is something he decided on the night he left the library, when he understood that he was choosing a thing that could not be unchosen. Tywin will receive him the way Tywin receives all facts he didn't arrange himself, which is without emotion and with complete attention to what they mean going forward. He will not praise Tyrion. He will not blame him. He will look at what exists now and decide what to do with it. This is not warmth. but it is a kind of consistency, and Tyrion has learned over many years to take consistency where he finds it. What he has not yet decided is when to go. He has been sitting in this chair for 2 evenings, telling himself he will arrange a departure in the morning, and then not doing it. He knows why. He is not good at pretending he does not know things about himself. He is waiting for something, which is a thing he has not named to himself yet, but which has to do with the children who are in Maegor's holdfast, and with the fact that the youngest of them is 7 years old and does not understand what is happening, and there is not a single adult in that building whose first priority is making sure he understands. He stands. He sets the wine down on the windowsill and does not take it with him. "I'll be back later," he says, to the room in general, which is the kind of thing you say when you are not entirely sure you will be back later, but you want to leave the option open. He goes out into the corridor, and then down the stairs and out into the street. The city swallows him, warm and loud, and smelling of smoke and river mud and someone's supper from a window above. He walks in the direction of the Red Keep and the children who are there, which is not something he planned to do, and which he is doing anyway, because he has always been better at deciding things in motion than deciding them in advance. And there is a boy in a building ahead of him who is 7 years old and crying very quietly, or at least that is what Tyrion imagines, and he has never been able to walk away from that particular sound. He does not know what he will say when he gets there. He will think of something. He usually does. Tyrion talks his way past 2 guards, which takes longer than he would like, but less time than he expected. The first guard is unmovable on principle. The second guard is movable on a different principle, which Tyrion has always found to be the more useful kind. He names himself, which opens doors most places in King's Landing, and which will not open doors in King's Landing for very much longer, and he says only that he is here to see his nephew, which is true, and which the second guard, being a man who understands what a child is and what an uncle is, decides is sufficient. He goes through the holdfast by memory, which is how he navigates most of the Red Keep. He grew up here in the way that Lannister children grew up here, which is as occasional visitors who learned the layout, because knowing your way around a place is a form of power, and power over your immediate surroundings is the only power a child actually has. The corridors are quiet this late. Most of the noise has moved somewhere else, as noise does in these buildings at night, gathering in the wings where the guards change and the servants work and the kitchens run, and leaving the family quarters with a particular stillness. He hears it before he reaches the door. It is a small sound, and a careful one. The sound of a child who has been told to stop, and has mostly stopped, but who has not entirely finished. He has heard this sound before. He recognizes it the way you recognize something that you were not expecting, and which you realize, once you have recognized it, that you were in some part looking for. He knocks. The sound stops immediately. There is a pause. Then a small voice says, "Come in the voice of someone who has practiced sounding like they are all right, and who is not entirely all right. Tommen is on the window seat. He has golden hair and a young face that is working very hard to be older than it is, and he has the eyes of his mother, green and watchful, and he looks at Tyrion with the particular expression of a child who is surprised and trying not to show it. He is 7 years old. He does not quite manage the expression. Tyrion pulls a chair close to the window and sits without being invited, because asking permission would establish a formality he does not want. He is, by some measurements, not much taller sitting than Tommen is on the window seat, and he sees the boy register this with a look that is trying very hard to be polite about it. "Your Grace," Tommen says, beginning as he has been taught. "Not your Grace," Tyrion says. "Your uncle." That hasn't changed. He looks at the boy. He looks at him honestly, the way he tries to look at things, without managing what he sees into something easier. The boy has been crying. There is no point pretending he hasn't. "Some things have changed," he says. "A great many things in the last 2 weeks. But that one hasn't." Tommen looks at his hands. He is the kind of child who looks at his hands when he is thinking about difficult things, which is an instinct Tyrion recognizes because he does the same thing, though he has learned to hide it. "Where is she going?" Tommen says. He does not say mother. He says she, which means he has been told enough that he doesn't need to say it. Tyrion thinks about who told him, and how, and whether they were careful about it, and he has no way to know the answers to any of those questions, and it does not help him to think about them now. "Essos," Tyrion says. "Across the narrow sea. There are cities there. Bravos, Pentos, others. She will find somewhere." He pauses. He thinks carefully about the next thing, because the next thing needs to be true, and it also needs to be something a 7-year-old can hold. She is not a person who doesn't manage. Whatever else is true about her, she is not a person who doesn't find a way. Tommen nods with the slow carefulness of a child, testing whether nodding is the right response. "And us?" he says. Tyrion looks at the window. The city is outside it, dark and lit in patches, going about its night with complete indifference to the two of them in this room. He thinks about what the correct answer is. The correct answer is Casterly Rock, your grandfather's seat, which is large and very gold and will feel like a cage for at least the first year before it starts to feel like something else. The correct answer is your grandfather will decide what you are and what you will become, and he will not be unkind about it, because cruelty is not your grandfather's method, but he will be purposeful about it in a way that may feel like the same thing sometimes. The correct answer is Joffrey will be difficult, and Myrcella will be quiet, and you will be the youngest and the most lost, and the one most likely to be overlooked, and being overlooked in that house is its own kind of freedom if you know how to use it. He says none of this. He says, "You'll go to Casterly Rock. It's your grandfather's seat. It's safe there, and your sister will be there, and your brother." He pauses on Joffrey. Joffrey will be there too. Tommen looks up. "Are you coming?" Tyrion opens his mouth. He closes it. He has a ship in the harbour that has been waiting for 3 days. He has a letter from his father that says, "Come home," and means, "Come now." He has bags that are already packed. He looks at the boy on the window seat, 7 years old, with his mother's eyes and a face that is doing its best, and he thinks about all the reasonable arguments for getting on that ship and leaving in the morning. "For a while," he says. And then he says, "Yes." It is not a complicated decision. That is the thing about it, which he will think about later on the road, and which he thinks about now, sitting in a chair in Maegor's Hold Fast, while a 7-year-old looks at him with something that is not quite relief, but is working toward it. It should feel complicated. He has given up something concrete, the ship, the schedule, the early departure from a city that is done with him, for a reason that is not political and not strategic, and not anything that Tywin Lannister would file under sensible choices. But it doesn't feel complicated. It feels like the obvious thing, once named. They sit for a while after that. Tommen asks him questions. Some of them Tyrion can answer, and some of them he cannot. and he tells the boy which is more honesty than Tommen is accustomed to receiving from adults, and which seems to be, for reasons Tyrion finds touching and a little sad, a form of comfort in itself. At some point the candle burns low, and Tommen falls asleep on the window seat, which is not a comfortable place to sleep, and which he manages anyway in the way that children manage to sleep in inconvenient places, suddenly and completely, as though consciousness is a coat they can simply shrug off. Tyrion sits for a while longer in the dark with the sleeping child, and the city outside the window, and the packed bags in his chamber, and the ship in the harbour. He thinks about the library 11 days ago, and the book, and the moment he picked it up and understood what it meant. He thinks, you do a thing, and then you live in what it becomes. That is all there is to it. You do not get to do the thing and then leave before the consequences arrive, and pretending otherwise is exactly the kind of lie that Tyrion has spent his entire life refusing to tell himself. He stands quietly. He goes to the door. He does not leave immediately. He stops with his hand on the frame and looks back at the boy on the window seat, at the sleeping face and the golden hair and the green eyes closed, and he thinks, I will go send a letter to the harbour and tell them the ship goes without me. I will do it in the morning. He will do it in the morning. He goes out and pulls the door closed behind him with the particular care of a man who does not want to wake anyone, and walks back through the quiet corridors of the holdfast toward whatever the morning will require of him, which is, he suspects, rather more than he originally planned for, and rather less than he now intends to give. Cersei leaves on a grey morning 2 weeks after the sentence is handed down, and Ned is at the harbour when she goes because he believes in witnessing the things he was responsible for setting in motion, even the things he would rather not watch. The harbour is not crowded. Word has gone out, quietly, that there is to be no gathering, no spectacle, no crowd of onlookers treating the departure of a queen as entertainment. Ned gave that order himself, and it was followed, which means the dock is occupied only by the guards, the ship's crew going about their work, and Ned standing at the edge of the quay with the salt wind off the water and the sound of ropes and timber. Cersei comes down from the city with a small escort and no ceremony. She is dressed plainly, which is a choice, and she carries nothing, which means her things have already gone ahead to the ship, and she walks with the bearing of a woman who is aware that she is being watched and who has decided to give nothing away. Ned has seen this bearing for 2 weeks. He has been watching it since the trial, and he has come to understand that it is not performance, or not entirely. She is genuinely this way. She has been this way her whole life, probably. The performance would be something different. What she is showing is simply what she is. She does not look at him as she approaches the gangway. He had not expected her to. At the bottom of the plank, she stops. She looks at the water. Not at anything specific. At the water itself, at the wide grey expanse of the harbour opening into the bay, and beyond that into the narrow sea, and beyond that into everything that is not King's Landing. She stands with that for a moment, in the way of someone taking an account of something. Then she turns. I would have been a good queen, she says, not asking him to agree, not asking him to argue, saying a thing she believes and needs to say aloud before she goes. Ned looks at her. He has thought about whether this is true. He has not reached a comfortable answer, and he is not going to offer her a comfortable lie in place of one. I don't doubt you believed you would be, he says. She holds his gaze for a moment. Something moves in her face that is not quite the calculated control she has been wearing. It is brief. Then it is gone. She turns and goes up the gangway without looking back. Ned stands on the dock until the ship moves. It catches the tide, which is going out, and moves into the harbour in the slow, deliberate way of a large vessel beginning a long journey. And he watches it until it is a shape on the water, and then a smaller shape, and then something he has to look for, and then nothing at all. He turns. He walks back through the harbour district toward the city, and around him King's Landing does what it always does, which is continue. The fish sellers are calling prices. A cart is stuck in a narrow street, and the cart's owner and the street's other occupants are conducting the ordinary dispute that results from this. Children run. A bell tolls from somewhere near the sept. Life is loud and indifferent, and it goes on, which is not a comfort exactly, but which is a fact, and Ned has always found facts more useful than comfort. Stannis arrives 4 days later. He comes by ship from Dragonstone with a retinue that is smaller than expected and better organized than almost anyone else's would have been. He does not fly banners. He does not arrange a procession. He rides from the harbour to the Red Keep through streets that have been cleared by his advance guard, on a horse that is unremarkable, in armour that is functional rather than ornate. The city watches him pass and forms opinions, and Stannis looks straight ahead and takes no notice of the opinions, which is either his greatest quality or the thing that will eventually cost him most, and probably both. Ned receives him in the throne room, because this is what the occasion requires, and stands at the foot of the Iron Throne with a man who is going to be king, and who both of them know it, and neither of them has been asked about. Stannis does not waste time on preamble. He looks at Ned directly, the way he looks at everything, and says, "I am the heir." "Yes," Ned says, "I want a council that tells me the truth. I can help with that. I want you to stay on as hand." Ned had expected this. He has been preparing his answer for 4 days. 6 months, he says, until the transition is stable and the council is settled and the succession is formally documented. Then I go home. Stannis looks at him. He is a man with a narrow face and iron-grey eyes, and the expression of someone who has spent years doing arithmetic on human disappointment and has become very good at it. That is not enough time. "It is what I can give," Ned says. "My family is in Winterfell. My children need their father. My wife has been managing a great house alone since I came south, and she will continue to manage it, because she is more capable than I am in most of the ways that matter, but she should not have to manage it alone indefinitely." He holds Stannis's gaze. 6 months. Use them well, and you won't need me to stay longer. Stannis is quiet for a moment. He does not accept the terms warmly, because Stannis Baratheon does not do anything warmly. But he accepts them. "Davos Seaworth," Ned says, before Stannis can move on. He understands what the people below these rooms need and want. That is not a small thing, and most of the men who will sit at your council table have spent their lives not knowing it. Use him. Stannis studies him. Davos was a smuggler. Davos was a smuggler 20 years ago. He is now the most honest man in your company, and possibly the most honest man in the city. Ned meets his eyes. Consider it. He can see Stannis doing the calculation. He can see the calculation reaching its answer. Stannis says nothing, which with Stannis means yes. Robert does not come to the formal reception. He is in his chambers, where he has been spending most of his days since the world changed, and he will not be seen much in public for a while, which is something Ned has accepted as the shape of things for now. He is not gone. He comes out at intervals, goes hunting, drinks in the moderate way of a man who is learning a different relationship with what had been the center of his life. He will find a purpose on the other side of this. Ned believes this. He has to believe it, because Robert is his oldest friend, and the alternative is something he is not willing to sit with. The evening after Stannis arrives, Ned writes to Catelyn. He sits at the desk in the Tower of the Hand with a fresh candle and a blank page, and he thinks about what to say that he has not already said. The crisis is resolved, or resolved enough. The succession is established. The truth that Tyrion Lannister walked out of a library with 12 weeks ago has done everything truth does, which is move through the world without asking permission and change everything it touches and leave the people involved to sort out what comes after. He writes, "Stannis is here. Things are as stable as they will be for a while. I am coming home in 6 months." He writes, "I miss the North." He seals the letter. He looks at the window, at the dark city outside it, at the lights going on and off in the buildings across the way as people go to bed or stay up or wake in the night and cannot get back to sleep. Somewhere out there, on a road between King's Landing and Casterly Rock, Tyrion Lannister is traveling with 3 children who are learning to be something new. Somewhere north of that, on a road to the Wall, Jaime Lannister is in chains. Somewhere on the narrow sea, a ship is carrying Cersei Lannister east toward a city she has never seen. Somewhere in the harbor moves and works, and does not stop. He blows out the candle. In the dark, he thinks about a library, and a book, and a man who picked it up one night and decided that knowing a thing was not enough. He thinks about what it costs to tell the truth in a city that has learned to live without it. He thinks about the fact that the cost was paid, and that the city is still standing, and that the morning will come, and that 6 months from now he will ride north and feel the air change at the neck and know he is almost home. He goes to sleep. In the library of the Red Keep, the Book of Lineages sits on its shelf between other books, ordinary in shape and extraordinary in what it contains, and no one is reading it. The truth has already done what it came to do. The rest belongs to the people still living in the world it made. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe.